Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to show you how drought resilient the ZZ plant can be and why your ZZ plant might look dead but is actually probably still alive. So this ZZ plant here is an example of one that you might have in your house that you've forgotten to water for several months, and the whole top half looks like it's died, but actually it's probably still alive and well underground, and it's just waiting for some water to reanimate it and bring it back to life. So this one I've been growing in pretty much the worst conditions you can for this plant. I've had it in baking hot sunshine on a really warm windowsill, and it hasn't had any water for about 8 months now, and last month it had still some leaves on it, and this month it's decided to drop its leaves. But I know this was going to be okay because ZZ plants, where they grow in the wild, they have a dry season and a wet season, and in the dry season they quite often lose all their leaves and they just die back to a rhizome underground. So they're really good at surviving drought, and that's part of the reason they're such good house plants. You can forget to water them for several weeks and they've got this big rhizome underground which stores a lot of water, and so that will just make up for the fact that you've forgotten to water it for a while. But when the drought gets too extreme, it can't support its leaves anymore, so it kills off the leaves so it doesn't lose any more water, and that way the water that it stores underground stays there and it can last for several more months even once the leaves have died off. So this one, as I say, looks completely dead, but if you look at the base here, the very bottom of the petiole here on this leaf is slightly green, and this one, because the soil's been exposed, you can just about see the top of the rhizome there, that it's still hard. It's not completely shriveled up. It has shriveled up quite a lot because this has, so as you can see, there's a big hole in there. That's where the rhizome was when it was larger, and it's actually shrunk. It's probably less than half the size that it is normally. So that rhizome there is holding all the water. There's also a little bit of water stored in the petiole there. So this plant is still alive. It's just in a dormant hibernating state, and it's just waiting for some water for it to start growing again. The only thing to add is if you've been overwatering your ZZ plant and it looks like this, it's probably not redeemable because overwatering kills them very easily. It drowns the roots, they rot away and they don't come back. But if you've underwatered, what you should find is that, as I say, the tubers underground are absolutely fine, and it just needs some water to bring it back to life. What I'm going to do is I'm going to water this now, put it under my time-lapse camera. Once I start watering, what will happen is it will think it's the wet season, it knows it's safe to start growing its leaves again, and it will send up some new leaves and it will become a nice healthy plant within a month or two. So it's now 10 months later, and as you can see from the time lapse, it has grown really nicely and is doing well. The reason it took 10 months for my plant to grow was because once I started watering it, it was beginning of winter and it was too cold in my house for it to come to growth. They only really grow fast and well when it's warm temperatures, but now it's summer, it's growing quickly, so if you do this with your own plant, you can get these results in 2 or 3 months instead of 10. So as you saw from the time lapse, the rhizome really starts to swell up when you first start to water it. That makes sure it's fully hydrated. Once it knows it's got enough water stored in its rhizome and it's ready to start growing, then it will send up the new shoots. So as you can see, it's got 2 new shoots already and it's got a 3rd one on the way. Now before this died back, it actually had smaller shoots. You can see the old leaves here. These were actually, size-wise, were much more like this one on the left. They were much smaller. So the new shoots are much bigger. So although it really got stressed with the lack of water and it shriveled down the rhizome to quite a small size, that rhizome kept all the sugars that it had stored previously in the growing season, and so it was ready to grow when the water came. So although it lost a lot of size, it when it re-swelled, it had a lot of energy still stored up. So what I'll do now is I'll just take off these old dead leaves just to improve the appearance. So as you can see, the rhizome hasn't grown too much more since it's put these leaves up, but these leaves have only just emerged. What's going to happen now is I'll need to repot it, as it's getting quite large for this pot. Now it will continue to grow new leaves for me, but what it will do is it will probably slow down its leaf growth for now, focus a bit more on growing its rhizome, and then in about 3 or 4 months it'll grow some more leaves again. You're always best to give it a little bit less water instead of too much, because too much will cause it to rot and die. Too little will cause it to go into a dormant state where you can then reanimate it from with some water, and it'll come back no problem. They are really drought resistant. I wouldn't be surprised if you could go for a year without water or even longer. They really are very drought resistant plants. And when you start to water your plant, if you don't notice any growth, just wait quite a while. If it's winter time or quite cool, it could be waiting for the warmer conditions. So it can take, as I say, up to 10 months to get good growth again, but it should be about 2 or 3 months on average. That's all for this video. If you want to learn a bit more about how to make your ZZ plants grow faster, I've made a separate video about that. But otherwise, that's it for now, and I hope you enjoyed the video and the time lapses.